Welcome to Via the Grapevine, proudly brought to you by LiquorCity Claremont and offering you the chance to learn more about wine, the masters behind them, and even which wines to collect. Today, we travel to a cool climate renowned for its Pinot Noir and Chardonnay in the upper Hemel-en-Aarde valley near the seaside town of Hermanus, an hour and a half's drive out of Cape Town. We find Newton Johnson Vineyards. MD Bevan Newton Johnson joins me now. Good morning, Bevan. Welcome.
How's it going? You well?
Excellent. Thank you. Very excited to chat with you on Via the Grapevine. Was lucky enough to bump into you at LiquorCity Claremont and experience an ad hoc tasting that you were doing with Tony DaCosta.
Yeah, you were ad hoc, but with Tony, it was all scheduled, eh?
I'm cheeky like that. I get pulled in at the last second, and it's quite cool, I must admit.
No, it's very lucky to have you join. Thanks very much for that.
I think it's a pretty strong brand name across South Africa, and I can't imagine that there's many people that have never heard of Newton Johnson wines. But for the few that may be watching this that are seriously just learning and trying to get into wines, give us a little bit of background into the name, firstly, and the foundation of how Newton Johnson Vineyards came to be, please.
Yeah, thanks for the opportunity. Newton Johnson is my surname and my brother's surname. It's a bit of an extension from my parents. So Newton is my mom's maiden name, and from her family, the Newtons originally came from Falkirk in Scotland and came out here in the 1850s. So they've been out here, they're about 100 years wiser than the Johnsons. And they settled actually in KZN and were cattle farmers and mealie farmers out there. So my mom was born in Ladysmith, and then my dad's family is Johnson, obviously, and then they came through from the UK, from Yorkshire, and came just after the war. My grandfather was an extremely conservative, staunch Yorkshireman, and did something very, very out of character for him. He took out a coin straight after the war, flipped it, and one side of the coin was Canada, and the other side of the coin was South Africa. So very grateful to that coin. And so they moved out here, and my dad grew up in Bantry Bay, actually, and my grandfather was a civil servant in the docks. He worked for the railroads and for the harbour, and my dad, from 6, 7 years old, was diving crayfish. So we've got 2 seahorses on the label. But that's a little bit of an extension of the truth. The truth is it should be 2 crayfish, but crayfish are not as picturesque. But essentially also we grew up for a lot of our childhood in Durban. My dad's then path in wine started in Durban. He was the treasurer and then chairman of the Durban Wine Society back in the late 70s and early 80s. And I kind of joked, growing up in Durban, you thought Afrikaans was only spoken in 2 places, on TV and in the classroom. And he got transferred to Stellenbosch. And then every guy bigger than me only speaks Afrikaans. So, yeah, it was quite a baptism of fire and adjustment, but then essentially we've grown up in the Boland for the rest of our lives. In Stellenbosch, Sunset West, and now Hermanus. In the mid-80s to late 80s, my dad did his thesis for Cape Wine Master, and it was on Pinot Noir. And as a kid, 13, 14 years old now, that must have been sort of in the mid-80s. I remember my dad driving out to Hamilton Russell, took me along and met Peter Finlayson, who was the winemaker at that time at Hamilton Russell. And I think it, in a sense that they were focusing, specializing on Pinot Noir and Chardonnay, it was probably planted a seed for my dad. And yeah, I think obviously then sort of 15 years later, he got the opportunity with his business and trading of wine to be able to create a home for his current business, which became the Hemel-en-Aarde. So we moved here as a family in the late 90s and then bought this current property roughly just before 2000. We thought we were going to be able to buy grapes, but soon found out anyone who was growing them in this area was using them for themselves. So essentially, we then bought some land, what was bush. It was actually a neglected protein farm, and we then planted it 2 vineyards for the first time. So yeah, that's sort of it.
And I believe your winemaking is overseen by your brother Gordon and his wife Nadia, and they have a passion for the classics. Taste as much Burgundy as they can. I imagine that has influenced their collective winemaking philosophy.
Very much so. Yeah, I mean, so once again, when the family sort of settled here and we became first-time wine producers and first-time farmers, I'm the bigger, lazier brother, so I said I'll take on sort of the drinking habits and I'll go do marketing and get out of town. Gordy, being the younger one, being a lot more creative, much more of a perfectionist, very similar to my father. We stuck him in the cellar and he became a unqualified winemaker. So we built a winery and told him to get on with it. But that's very much how he sees his winemaking, very much from a creative aspect, very much by sense and taste. And then Gordy met Nadia when she was doing an internship at Hamilton-Russell, and she is the only qualified winemaker in the family. And they joined up, and my parents have been working together for virtually all of their lives. Gordy and Nadia have now been working together. They are very much the partnership and the team and the core now to our family venture going forward. They take a very different viewpoint to the same glass of wine. Gordy, again, very much the creative side. Nadia, very much more the sort of academic side, very much looking at the black and white of it. But yes, you know, the classics, and when I say classical, I think obviously in our part of the industry, being Pinot Noir and Chardonnay, would be sort of Burgundy focused. We ourselves out here in the Hemel-en-Aarde, cool climate for the Cape, but we're 5 k's from the ocean. Very, very different to what you would find in Burgundy. So we draw a lot from Burgundy, but in that sense, it's more about a philosophy, an observation, being aware and using that perception and experience into what we would like to show in our wines. So, I mean, we admire Burgundy, but we're far from it. And we're very much, over our short time as a region, as a family, as producers, looking to form our own philosophy. And I say philosophy is not a copy and paste process. You know, you can take a look what other guys have achieved over hundreds of years and learn from it, but very much to take out what you feel that you should apply in developing your own.
That's really fantastic, and I get you completely on that. Is that you have a base, or they at least have a base point that they start with in terms of philosophy, and then they allow themselves to explore around that. Your dad and the unqualified winemaker son, have they ever kind of bumped heads, so to speak, in terms of their thinking, or are they quite aligned as well?
You know, it's been 23 years now that we've been working as a family, and it is essentially from my parents to myself and my brother, 4 of us, and now Nadia. And as I said, yeah, in the beginning, the core focus would have been through my parents, and then I think for a small time between myself and my brother. And when Nadia joined us just over 10 years ago, yeah, that has now very much become the energy and the focus of us as a family and as a farm. And yeah, we've all bumped heads. My father and my brother bumped heads plenty of times. We do as well. And I think it was amazing if I could sort of sound as the older brother that has been sort of more sort of domineering at times. This has been an amazing process to see my brother being the quieter one, how being unqualified in the beginning, finding his strengths, and when slowly sort of forming his own personality within his wines, how, like the family, myself included, my father, have managed to back off. And yeah, he very much now makes it by himself and Nadia, and they come and present it to us. And it used to be sort of a, I don't want to say presented it to us, but every now and again, it's a like a little job to have it work. You get like 3 samples at the end of the day, and you say, go home. This is the new vintage of Family Vineyards Pinot Noir, or the new vintage of Albarino, and let me know what you think. Which one is your favorite? And we'll have a discussion. But yeah, no longer is it committee in the beginning. It's more committee or approval by the end. So the philosophy, the direction has very much been set by Gordon and Nadia. And thankfully what they've managed to achieve over the years has started to keep us quieter and quieter as critics.
Fantastic. That's awesome to hear. Nice to hear that there's a good family dynamic as well. Walker Bay, obviously, as I mentioned, one of the coolest wine growing areas in the Cape, and the Hemel-en-Aarde Valley, renowned for Chardonnays and Pinot Noir. Your winery acknowledged as somewhat of a Pinot Noir mecca. So I'm giving you the opportunity now to be the marketer. Take us through, if you will, please, the 4 in your range and some of the highlights in terms of why you have 4 different styles of Pinot.
Yeah, I mean, thanks for that opportunity, because, I mean, when we moved here and we bought this property and it was a blank canvas and we started to plant it for the first time, I kind of say that particularly myself, I love to try and keep life as simple as possible. We thought maybe the farm, which was planted then till, well, when we planted 12 hectares, would be 50% Chardonnay and 50% Pinot Noir. But unfortunately, life is not that simple, and the soils were a lot more complex than what we realized. We've got some of our highest vineyards, Pinot Noir vineyards, up top here by the winery at 280 meters above sea level. And then they drop down to the Onrus River, which is just around 200. So we've got quite a large drop in elevation on the property. And through that, a lot of different soils. So the plantings became a lot more complicated. The expression of the farm became a lot more dynamic. And then, I mean, it is to the essence of, if I can start with Pinot Noir itself, what it is. It's known as the heartbreak grape, or as winemakers would sort of say, the most difficult wine to make, or grape variety to make. And every wine variety or grape variety will show us a difference between soils or climate. But Pinot will show us more than most varieties. So even when we've got on one very small property, the drop in elevation, different soils, the expression we had from the different vineyards was immense for us. And I kind of always felt that like terroir was something that you read in some of the Oaks article or in some of the Oaks book or something like that. And suddenly we started to see it unfold in front of us. So the very first wine that we did have off the farm was the family vineyards Pinot Noir and family vineyard Chardonnay. And the Pinot Noir became a lot more, as I would say, complicated than what we expected. We had very quickly in the plantings of even only 3-4 years difference in age, very different expressions, not perfumed and sort of prettier as a younger vineyard, to then those here near the top of the farm, slightly older and into more clay soils, much deeper, darker, structured wines. So we initially landed up with 2 expressions from the property over the first 3-4 years of plantings, which became the family vineyards Pinot Noir, which is our best expression we feel from the property itself. It's an estate example of what we feel is the best from the farm. To then we've got the Walker Bay Pinot Noir, which is now at the moment the younger vineyard sitting at the bottom of the property. And again, that wasn't really a kind of like to disqualify myself as the marketer by a marketing plan. We didn't intend to have to, but literally the difference in expressions from them. But within also the family vineyards, the Pinot Noir vineyards here at the top of the property, we have seen an immense sort of difference between 2 of the staple vineyards, and which is the Sea Dragon and the Wind on Sea. And within those, then we've now elevated them since 2017 to a single vineyard. And in a sense, maybe taken a leaf again from Burgundy. Single vineyards as an expression for Pinot Noir is seen as the epitome of Pinot Noir. It's not something, again, we wanted to follow just because they do it, but we literally saw such a difference in expression between these 2 vineyards. They're either side of a road, and there's very, very little distance between them, but quite a large difference in soils. So then to encapsulate, we've got the 4. We've got the Walker Bay Pinot Noir, sort of, so to say, sitting at the entry level for the property. Younger, prettier, really shows perfumed fruit that the valley does like to have a character within its Pinot Noirs. We've got the family vineyards, which is most probably what we're most well known for the last 13 vintages. And it has been a collection of the best expressions of vineyards on the farm, traditionally been 3 vineyards. Now we've got a 4th one that's coming to it. And then we've got the 2 single vineyards, Sea Dragon and Wind on Sea. So yeah, those are the 4. 2 property examples and then 2 vineyard examples.
Exceptional. And you haven't rested on your laurels in terms of Pinot Noir, because now you're doing something completely new. You also produce a wine from a white variety that is most probably unfamiliar to most South Africans. It's the Spanish grape Albarino or Alvarino when grown in Portugal. Yeah. Are you the first in South Africa to bottle this? Because I read somewhere that there are only 3 bottlings of the varietal in the country.
Yeah, there are at the moment. So there's 4 actually at the moment, but yes, it's traditionally been 3. We were the first to make it and put it into bottle. Our first vintage was 2014. It was literally, I can remember, like 30 liters or a little bit more than that, got into 1 barrel. 2015, I would say, was our first proper vintage. And now we've just released the 2020 vintage. Yeah. So there it is. How it happened is basically within the Hemel-en-Aarde, the most planted variety is Pinot Noir, where the only region to have Pinot Noir is our #1 variety, then Sauvignon Blanc, Chardonnay. And those 2 other white varieties, and we've got plenty of Chardonnay planted on the property, are seen throughout the Cape. And we sort of have niche expressions within those grape varieties. And we wanted to look at something that really, and what has also sort of come for us over the last 10 years or more, is just how dramatically different our soils are in the upper Hemel-en-Aarde Valley compared to our neighbors down in the Hemel-en-Aarde Valley and Hemel-en-Aarde Ridge. And basically, we've got this granite bedrock that has risen up through the Bokveld shale that our neighbors have got. And we wanted to look at a quintessential white variety that would match that. And again, I kind of like to simplify, but sort of say that Google granite soils, maritime climate, white variety, and we came up with Albarino. But it was actually my father's suggestion. He had seen it in the late noughties into 07, 08, being planted into California and Australia, being taken out of its native Spain and Portugal into these new world countries. And we like to look at it. So we tried to search for it from Spain first. They said we weren't Spanish enough. So we then looked at Australia, and Australia had a bit of an industry scandal that some of their material wasn't Albarino. So ultimately we found some material in California and we brought it into the country. And then we made our first vintage in 14, but I would say our first crop of a few barrels of wine in 15. And it has been an amazing journey. I would say, like, and again, if I qualify myself as a farmer, I'm the desk jockey in the family and I've got white soft hands, but working with Pinot Noir and Chardonnay hasn't been fun. It's been a very, very arduous and difficult journey, but a satisfying one. Albarino has been fun. It really has been amazing. I'd like to sort of say I didn't quite know what to do with my job. I'm busy telling South Africans very similar to myself that have barely heard the variety before, to then foreigners overseas. You know, they had never heard that South Africa had Albarino. But there's been an amazing reception to it. And so much so that someone like Springfield came along to us afterwards and asked if they could plant it. So Springfield have got 10 hectares of the variety now. Nederburg have got a little bit of it that they blend, which is the one that often gets forgotten. And then Botanica, Julie Purple, has now planted some of it, and she's released the Flower Girl Albarino. And coming out from 2020 as well will be Joostenburg out near Paul Stellenbosch. So a very good one of my oldest friends, Toro Meiberg, has also planted it now. And he'll be having quite an expression. And I mean, I think he would be the only organic expression then of the Albarino. Yeah. So
in terms of you mentioned Nederburg are blending with it. Is it the kind of grape though that likes to be a single varietal, or is it something that has traditionally been blended?
Just going on, you're going to draw me into the war. We've got the Portuguese versus the Spanish here. Yeah.
It's the Inquisition.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. I hope Charlie's not listening. Yeah, the Portuguese have traditionally had blended whites, and the one that we mostly know well is the Vinho Verde. And they have got then Albarino, which they've blended with Modelo and a number of other white varieties into blends. So the Portuguese believed in the blend. And then the Spanish, up just north of their border into Galicia and Rías Baixas, have actually then focused on it as a single varietal. And so they have really made it popular. I think through the success of Sauvignon Blanc through the 80s, 90s, and then Chardonnay traditionally before that, you know, there has been, particularly in whites, a drawing to single varietals or single varietals on the label, and that has maybe popularized Albarino now in the last sort of 5 to 10 years. And the Portuguese have traditionally blended it, but there are now far more expressions coming from Portugal where it's a single varietal. So I'm kind of saying I don't know, but we really do believe in it. We really do believe in it as a single varietal. What we wanted to see from it, you know, and kind of like to point a little bit of a finger at Sauvignon Blanc. We find a lot of fruitiness, a lot of upfront expression from Sauvignon, good acidity, which we like in our part of the world. But we sometimes found that Sauvignon Blanc lacked a bit of texture or needed a little bit of oomph, a bit of belly to it. And that's what we wanted to see in Albarino, and that's what it does give us. So we're looking very much for a food-friendly, very textured, fuller example of the variety.
I think that's as good a mark as ever to actually get into tasting this particular one. Then it's got beautiful aromatics. It's very floral notes, quite inviting, and I'm quite. Well, I see what you mean by the body, a fuller body, yet you don't lose that acidity. There it comes. There it is.
The The acidity of this grape variety has amazed us. If I go into the name a little bit, and just basically what we were concerned about in the beginning, and what we would like to show in this wine, is if I start off with just the name, I mean, again, when you try and sort of explain the origins of Pinot Noir and Chardonnay, you can get drawn into centuries. Whereas with Albarino, it's come in the last few hundred years, but that part of Spain is where the Camino finishes, the Christian pilgrimage, Compostela. And basically, over the hundreds of years, monks have been bringing on the pilgrimage grape varieties from other parts of Europe. And this grape variety is expressed in its name, where Alba stands for white, and the Rino means from the Rhine. And basically, it's felt that these forefathers, or the forebearers of this grape variety, are Riesling and Gewürztraminer, these very aromatic varieties from Germany or from Central Europe. And over now, more than 100 years or more, it's developed into its own grape variety, Albarino. So it's got this very aromatic, and again, sort of to distinguish it from something like we know very well, Sauvignon Blanc, this is more aromatic than, say, just fruity. And it really carries aromatics very well from its forebearers of Riesling and Gewürztraminer. But it's been in Spain now for, I don't know, quite a while, and it's already developed into its own grape variety. It's a massive industry for northern Spain, and it's got like a much fuller texture than what we would almost see, but it's also got the ageability. It can really go the miles. I was
just going to ask you, Tony da Costa of LiquorCity Claremont is Portuguese, as you know. So how similar to him is the grape in terms of ageability?
Tony is aging extremely well. So I'd like to say Albarino can hopefully hold its line along him. Tony seems to have an energy that many of us can't keep up with. So, I mean, thankfully we see it through LiquorCity at Claremont. No, it's got ageability. It really, really can go well. And we are still too young to see it. 15, 16, these are very young vineyards. We'd like to see them do well. Our Dutch agent opened the 15 the other day, and he said he was very happy with it. So it was nice to hear. 2020, got to say, I mean, again, I always sort of qualify this, be careful, I'm the guy who's got to sell it. So obviously I'm saying it's the best vintage we've ever put into bottle. But it is really in a very short time span. We're very happy with 2020. It's a lot more aromatic than we had in 19. Still very young now, though. It's got a bit of a green tinge on the color. It's got a lot more developing to do, just open up a bit more and just show itself as it ages in the bottle. But we are very excited about 2020, and we've now got 2 hectares planted. So there's a bit more of it around. And I mean, it is always known as a seafood variety from northern Spain. I mean, seafood is their staple diet. And we've got an amazing heritage with seafood all around our coast. I mean, I've grown up in Umhlanga. We used to go and do crayfish diving in Christmas Bay on the north coast of Natal, through to now living in the Boland for all of my lives, 15 minutes away from the sea. And it's lovely to see a grape variety that does really want to go with our heritage of seafood. Yeah.
Is that what you meant when you said to me in our communication before the interview that Albarino works into summer and who we are? That's what you mean?
Yeah, very much. Yeah, except the summer's not quite giving it to us. We can't wait to get to the beach, and it just doesn't seem to align us out the door. Yes, no, very much. It's very much it can handle maybe a little bit of cooler temperatures as far as, it's a bit of a fuller white. So, it can help. But to me, it's made for summer. It's got a very fresh acidity there. Getting back into, again, just discovering this variety. We looked at it, we've got Albarino, we've got the soils, we've got the cooler climate, but when we compared it to that part of Spain, we are far drier and we are far warmer than that part of Spain, strangely enough. And we started working with this from 14, 15 when we went into the Cape drought. And we were concerned as how we are automatically in black and white on averages, warmer and drier. How's it going to handle? And it has been amazing. It's cropped well, and we're not really a farm that's looking for massive crops, but it's really has surprised us. And even in this 2020, we had to allow it to ripen a week further. We were happy with the sugar levels, happy with everything else, but we needed the acidity to drop out a bit with the ripening. So that has been the best variety we've seen on the farm to date in holding its acidity as a grape. And so it's been extremely encouraging.
That's very awesome. You mentioned to me the last time that I saw you that you had a professor of geology investigate the soils of the valley. Did he discover anything new or shocking to you that you didn't know?
Yeah, we had a great time. It's 2 weeks ago that Professor David Bell came up from PE. He's been a long-standing client of ours, and it's been an ongoing discussion between ourselves and Craig and Anne at Restless River next door that we keep getting told. I mean, we recognize as an appellation up the Hemel-en-Aarde Valley being very different to our neighbors further down the valley and up over the ridge. That our soils are the main distinguishing factor, these granite soils, much older. It's not so much the age, but extremely different in character. Very similar to what you get in Paarl and the Paderbach out in the Swartland. And so it's like, if they're so different, we need to understand them a lot better. So David came along. He drinks a lot of wine. He's extremely knowledgeable within his subject. He just kind of also had to give a little proviso. He says he doesn't know if he can tie the two together. But he was walking around on both the properties. It amazed us that what we felt and heard is different, is a lot more different than what we expected. So it is the surprising bedrock that has risen up between these soils around us. We've got a lot more to go. David wants to come down again and slowly walk through it together, time over time, and take a look at it. But yeah, we've established also again how very complex our soils are, how they are varied between what we have the sandstone line further down by the river, rocks down by the river, to these granite clays up here. And now it's, I think, back to ourselves and Craig to go and look at what this really particularly does for our Chardonnays and our Pinot Noirs. This is a natural home in that soil for something like Albarino, but to understand more what it does for the rest of our varieties and our property. But it was very good. It was awesome to go through it.
That's awesome. And I believe that he didn't just look at your property, he looked at the valley. So Hemel-en-Aarde, relatively small community of wine brands. Do you all get on with each other and share your knowledge?
We do, except, in the surf, it's all for ourselves, So no, we do. It's come a long way. It's been amazing growth. As I said, Gordy and myself have lived in the valley now for 23 years, from where we were like the third or fourth producer to now there's over 12 of us. I got invited to Chris Albrecht's house for a bride 2 weekends ago. Being a father, I don't get out that often, and I saw that this is a regular gathering amongst the vineyard managers and the winemakers, and this could be proper into the early hours of the morning. We've got another one of those coming up this weekend. So yeah, the boys, they do get together. We care a lot, but again, like I said, with someone like David Bell coming around, it was a collaboration between ourselves and Restless River. So it's a young region. All of us kind of bought blank canvases. We have got a lot of emotion involved in our properties. We didn't inherit any sort of track record. We all created it. The guys really do take pride and are very, very sensitive about their properties, and I think so they should be, in their wines. But thankfully, we all get on, and we're fortunate that it's a part of the world that has accomplished a lot in a short time, if I can say. And I think that our neighbors and ourselves will accomplish a lot more. I mean, I think if we can all behave ourselves and just invest in our vineyards, we'll see a lot more from our region. But we get on very well.
It's great to hear that, and that collaborations are there to help keep pushing you forward as a region as well. As if your wines are not enough of a reason to visit, the winery also boasts a stunning view and perfectly placed tasting room and restaurant, which looks out towards the popular coastal town of Hermanus and the ocean. What's your current restaurant offering now?
Yeah, very fresh, very summery. Talisha LaRue is the chef in the house. She joined us now this summer. Like many restaurants, we had a bit of a challenge over the last year. So Talisha's coming. She's a local from Hermanus. And has brought, I think, a lot of sort of an Asian flair through to also something that's a lot fresher than what we normally see in town. That's been quite great because we do look over the sea. We've got some of these varieties around. She's got soft shell crab on the menu, to some steak to help keep me happy every now and again, to a lot of different things. She's got, thankfully, a very wide repertoire, but something that's a lot sort of fresher that we've seen into the summer, as I sort of said, and just something a little bit more impromptu. You can feel sort of with this kind of year, a lot of us have left sort of the rigors of dining behind and really just want something a lot more just easier, informal, I'd like to say social with those around your table, but there's also obviously social distancing. So yeah, but we've, I think, seen it in this kind of year that all of us just want to go out and appreciate people around us. When we bought the property, we bought it because we wanted vineyards in the ground. We didn't actually kind of look at the view. And as we started to clear the alien bush on the farm, you got an opportunity to look up. And very, very grateful and fortunate to say that we get people from around the world who come in and compliment the view as well. So yeah, there's lots to take in.
In terms of the, if people want to come out to the restaurant to visit, what are your opening hours? What days?
Open for breakfasts and for lunches from Thursdays to Sundays. So kind of a little bit of a sleepy town still, even over December from Mondays to Wednesdays. But give it Thursdays right through to Sundays, breakfasts and lunch, and then Friday evening. So for those who are coming into Hermanus for the weekend and have kind of battled a bit of the traffic later afternoon, you don't have to go home and cook. You can come and pop into the winery. And there's sort of a small plates menu. You can sort of last week, we had some locals in the valley and the boys had been cycling. They clubbed 9 plates of food each. So the small plates is sort of a take on tapas to allow you to experience a lot of different tastes and things like that. So yeah, again, a very, very open, very sort of informal attitude towards sitting down, enjoying a lot of little different things. And if you want wine by the glass, or if you enjoy something maybe a little bit more into one bottle.
Awesome. I want to wrap because I know you've probably got a lot to do, and I've got some quick fire questions for you. First answer that comes to mind, you don't have to think too deeply about the answers. And some of them might be a bit of a stinker, but hopefully not too much. The first question I have for you, favorite grape variety to drink?
Yeah, unfortunately, I'm a creature of habits, and so it would be Pinot Noir.
Pinot Noir for you. Okay, no worries. I know you've got this wonderful history of crayfish diving, and you've just mentioned that you love a bit of beef. So I'm going to put you on the spot with beef fillet or surf and turf.
Yeah, again, back into the family. I'm the black sheep of the family. So we used to go and dive fresh crayfish, and then I would have my pork sausages along for the braai, because there's only so much crayfish I can eat. So yeah, I'm a bit of a heathen in the family. So I'd have to go with beef, but I'd also say not fillet for me though. But I'd definitely go with beef if I could have something a little bit meatier.
I must tell you, I was in Riebeek Castile recently and went into a restaurant there that had the most superb surf and turf I've ever had in my life. It was a beef fillet with 2 crayfish tails. It was the best.
That actually, I could take one of those. I'll have to maybe
and really reasonably priced as well. It wasn't exorbitant. It was awesome. If a movie was made of your life, what genre would it be, and who would play you?
I wouldn't want to say my life, but yeah, very, very grateful to grow up in South Africa. I do travel a lot for work. I lived in London for a few years just to go and see it, and I absolutely adore South Africa. So if I could sort of say it in that way, I think growing up in South Africa, I would have loved to have seen it more in scene and scenic sort of places in the 60s and the 70s. So the genre would be more, say, the 70s. I don't know who would play it, some blonde oak. Yeah, but
a cricketer. Sorry, I had to say it. You do have a similarity there.
No, I've been told that before, and then like Klopp every now and again, but thankfully I've moved away from him more to a bit more ball sense. But I don't have either of those qualities. And Flintoff's lost a lot more weight than me.
What have you done that you're most proud of, Bevan?
Very lucky that grown up in Stellenbosch and places out to here, and very lucky enough to have accomplished quite a few things. But being a dad and being a husband, it's like my son is now 14, becoming a teenager. Don't tell my dad, but I think he's actually thankfully much better behaved than I was. Yeah, and see my daughter, she's 8 years old. And so being a father for me, number one, being a husband, number two, and my wife passed away a few years ago. It was been amazing to be able to try and give someone the best that you have of your personality and your so I'm grateful as a partner and as a father and as a mentor.
Awesome. That's encouraging for us men who have wives that want to have children, and we're a little bit scared. So thank you for that.
The fear is real, though.
I know you're a surfer as well. Shortboard or hang 10?
Oh, that's the most difficult of the day. Do you know what I'm starting to embrace? Well, I haven't managed to hang 10. I'm I think a bit heavy for some of those boards, but I do start to embrace actually the classic lines of a longer board. And then the midlife crisis still comes through in the short board. So I'm the surfer now that I wanted to be at 16 years old, that I've now got, I think, about 14 different surfboards. And I've got a few longboards right through down to like even a 510. I should embrace the longboard more, but I'm still holding on to the shortboard, midlife crisis.
I envy you because I find that the only board, given the rotund nature of my body, the only board that will hold me is a longboard nowadays. So I just go, yeah, it's all about the longboard life, eh? Sure.
100%. And I get teased the whole time that I keep blaming the board for my poor surfing. So you see.
Well, you know, sometimes there is a bit of imbalance on the board, and the fins are not screwed in properly, and there's, yeah. Anyway. Thank you very much for the conversation today. It's been wonderful getting to know you and Newton Johnson Vineyards better. And of course, I would promote that you get along to LiquorCity Claremont to buy Newton Johnson wines. And if you fancy your luck, then answer the easy question here on the Via the Grapevine page. You could win a case of Newton Johnson Family Vineyards wines plus Newton Johnson wines. And thank you for absolutely, I'm looking at the list of wines that you're putting into that case. Looks absolutely fantastic. Thank you for that.
Absolute pleasure. I mean, thank you, Guy, for having me today and for allowing us to chat a little bit about our wines and exploring the Albarino. But yeah, I mean, wine is there for discovery. So those who are keen on the question, you know, the answer is a little packet of discovery, what we're about, what our part of the world is about. And hopefully you'll see that I am actually talking sense and not too much rubbish.
Bevan Newton Johnson, our guest today. This Via the Grapevine brought to you by LiquorCity Claremont. Visit their wine emporium for a journey via the Grapevine. Cheers, Bevan.
Thanks, Guy. Cheers a lot. Have a good one, eh? Merry Christmas.